We saw how we could draw vertical points using a for loop. To do that, we used this code, which gave us this output. What if we want to draw vertical and horizontal points in a grid like this? To do this, we would draw the first points on a horizontal line 10 pixels apart, then move to the next line 10 pixels below the first, and continue drawing the points horizontally 10 pixels apart. To draw the next line, we would move 10 pixels below the second line and draw the points horizontally 10 pixels apart. Try it out on paper yourselves. These are two repetitive actions, one to move us down each line, so therefore changing the y of the points each time by incrementing them with 10. Once we move on each line, we draw the points horizontally, therefore changing the x each time. To do this, we will use what is called a nested for loop, in which we put a statement inside another for statement. So to move down on each line, remember, we need to change the y. We will write something like this. To move horizontally, remember, we need to change the x to draw each point. We will write something like this. This is called a nested for loop because the first loop forms like a little nest for the second one. We're not very original here. This nesting does not only apply to pairs of for statements. You can put as many for statements as you want inside one another. You just have to be careful that the code does what you want it to do. What would happen if we switched between the for statements? Let's try it out. That's right. The output is the same because we start in the same position and we increment both the x and the y with the same values. However, this is not always the case, so you will have to be careful with the ordering of the for loops. Let's try one more example. Say we wanted to draw a 5 by 5 grid of circles, let's say a radius of 10, that are filled with all shades of gray, starting from white and ending up at dark gray. Similar to how we drew the points before, we will use a nested for loop, but instead of the points, we will draw ellipses such as this one. Now, all of these ellipses are white, so what we will do now is draw them in increasingly darker colors, starting from white. Remember, a fill of 255 gives us white, and then darkening to the color by decreasing from 255. To do this, we'll start with a variable called fill color, which we initialize to 255. In the innermost for loop, we'll set the fill color to be fill color, like this. Do you think this code changes anything? Try with pen and paper. Did the values of the fill color variable change? That's right, they don't. Let's run the code and see. Indeed, nothing. To make the fill increasingly dark, we will decrease 10 from the fill color variable after each drawing of the ellipse. The pseudocode for this would look like this. The code for this pseudocode will look like this. Let's run it and see what happens. Ta-da! As we wanted, we have various shades of gray darkening in color. Now, the order and the positions of these lines of code is very important. What do you think would happen if we took out the fill statement from within the second for loop and put it in the first for loop before the second started, like this? That's right. All the circles on each line will be drawn using the same color. This is because the second for statement draws all the circles on the horizontal line. The x is changing, right? And the fill statement is called before it and thus has the effect on all the drawings for that for. What if we put the fill statement back and took the update of the fill color variable and put it after the second for ended, like this? That's right, the change in darkening would not be so severe. Why is that? What values does the fill color variable have? Give it a shot at finding them using pen and paper. Also, try to experiment by placing these 3 statements in various positions in the for loops to see what happens.